Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today we're going to talk about some great unsung albums from 1969 that never really seem to get a lot of love. I think they're lost in the shuffle. When you think of 1969, you're always thinking, the same top 10, top 20 albums that everybody talks about. These albums are under the radar, not talked about very often, so I thought I'd give these albums a little love today. They're excellent records. So I'm going to start off today with the second album by Terry Reid. Of course, Terry Reid was almost the vocalist for Led Zeppelin. He actually passed on the audition for Jimmy Page, decided to go solo. This is his second album from 1969. All these albums are from 1969. And this album in particular, this second album of his, really shows his vocal range and his talent, his vocal prowess. There's a couple of songs on here, a couple of ballads that are just really striking. One called Mayfly, another one called July. Just shows you how he could just sing about any kind of style. He also rocks out on a lot of great songs like Rich Kid Blues, Super Lungs My Super Girl, Silver White Light. My absolute favorite song on here, though, is a song called Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace. It's on side 2. A song that even Cheap Trick covered on their Live at Budokan album, the one that they released, the full complete show back in the early, maybe it was the late 90s. They did the complete Budokan release, and they do a blazing version of Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace. But yeah, this guy, really talented. Unfortunately, he missed the Led Zeppelin boat, but maybe it was for the best. He's still around with us today. He's still making music. I really haven't heard much of his latest material, but his first 3 albums, this one, the previous one, Bang Bang, You're Terry Reid. And then he did a third album called River, which is more of a folk acoustic album, which is fantastic. But yeah, his first 3 albums are great. This one is probably my favorite, though. Just a lot of great moods, tempos, and styles. So Terry Reid, self-titled album from 1969. Another absolute 5-star gem I've talked about a few times in the past is the album Street Noise by Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger and the Trinity. This is a double album, and it's a combination of course, Brian Auger's Hammond organ, sort of kind of jazz rock, but it features the unbelievable, underrated vocals of Julie Driscoll, this white singer who sings like part Aretha, part like Nina Simone. I mean, she's in her own class, Julie Driscoll. So underrated, never really caught on here in America. This album, I think, did sell some when it came out, but it's just 2 albums worth of just incredible songs and playing. Her vocals shine on, like, even they do a cover version of Light My Fire, which I think is really one of the definitive cover versions I've ever heard of Light My Fire. There's these long kind of epics, this one called Czechoslovakia, which is really intense. It's really just blistering vocal from Julie Driscoll. Take Me to the Water. She does a great version of Save the Country by Laura Nyro. And then there's a whole side of Brian Auger instrumentals that are just fabulous. So it's kind of half Julie Driscoll singing, and then the other is like half great instrumentals. Just a really well sequenced album. Just an absolute 5-star classic, one of my favorite albums of all time. I saw Brian Auger back in 2014 at the Baked Potato in Los Angeles, and he signed this record. And he was really excited when I put this album in front of him. He was like, I like that album. So yeah, great album. Just, if you've never heard this album, check it out. Brian Auger has a ton of albums, but this is one of his greatest albums, featuring Julie Driscoll. She later changed her name to Julie Tippett. And they also have another great collaboration from 1978 called Encore that Warner Brothers released that you should check out as well. That's really, really good. But yeah, great album here. Street Noise from Brian Auger and the Trinity and Julie Driscoll. Now, another great one from Soul Brother #1 is Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. This is a great record, kind of half really good funky numbers like Licking Stick, the title track. There's some really good instrumentals on here too, showing Soul Brother's real Hammond B3 prowess. He plays organ on Shades of Brown and I'll Lose My Mind, both songs ending side 1, side 2. There's some real great like ballady type songs. I Guess I'll Have to Cry, 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 I Love You, Then You Can Tell Me Goodbye. But anything this guy touches in the 60s or early 70s, I just love. I'm just a huge James Brown fan. I have the Star Time box set. I want to get more of his albums, though, from the 60s. Yeah, just a great album here from James Brown. Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, from 69. Another great one is the third album by the Youngbloods. This is a terrific album. I've mentioned it before. Elephant Mountain. Has 3 players in here. We got Joe Bauer on drums, and we've got Banana on guitar. This is kind of a collection of really good like singer-songwriter stuff. There's also kind of like jazz rock on here too. A lot of great electric piano. The album starts off with a phenomenal cut called Darkness, Darkness with this fiddle, and goes into this just ramping, just raw solo at the end from Banana. Goes into some great ballads like Sunlight by Jesse Colin Young. He's the lead singer in the band. Of course, they had the big hit with Get Together. This came out, I think, around the time they released the song Get Together, even though it was released in 67. But just an album full of just amazing, great songs, even like some great, what do you say, like instrumental tracks like On Sir Francis Drake. You got the Rain song, Quicksand's another great Jesse Colin Young ballad. Ends with Ride the Wind, great little jazz rock type of thing with some just great electric piano. Just a really great varied selection of songs. Very, very infectious. Great album. Heard this growing up. Still love it to this day. Elephant Mountain from 1969 from the Youngbloods. Another great hard rocking album from 69 is the second Grand Funk album, also known as the Red Album. I remember when I was about 10 or 11, well, my brother had this album, so I heard this album when I was very young, like 4 years old, 5 years old, but I had a friend on the neighborhood I lived in back in the 70s, and his brother had the same album, and we'd go over there, and back in the 70s, you know, you'd play on the street with the kids, you'd play board games, and I remember we'd play Monopoly, we'd play cards, and we'd have this album spinning all the time. I remember during the summer of 76, and it just rocks. It starts off with, Got This Thing on the Move, Please Don't Worry, Highfalutin Woman, Mr. Limousine Driver, In Need on side 1. But side 2 is really gets interesting and really just rocking. I love this whole like bass drums vocal combination, this real like raw garage rock thing they're doing here. But it's almost like kind of, it's not metal, but it's definitely like early hard rock. But side 2 starts off with a great tune, Winter in My Soul. Then it goes into a version of Paranoid. It's not the Black Sabbath version. It's a completely separate song, Paranoid. But the standout on this album is Inside Looking Out, a song that the Animals did on the album Animalization. It was also released as a single in 66. This version is just balls to the wall. Great harmonies, not harmonies, but just great lead vocals from Mark Farner. Great vocalist, especially in these early albums. Just really, he could really belt it. A lot of range. But yeah, Inside Looking Out, I think it goes on for about 9 minutes, and it just ends with this crescendo, his vocal, just incredible. So yeah, a favorite of mine from 1969 that doesn't really get a lot of love. The second album from Grand Funk, titled Grand Funk. A lot of people talk about, they talk about Sweetheart of the Rodeo. Is that the first country rock album, or is the Gilded Palace of Sin by the Burritos the first country rock album? I think this album is just as good. It doesn't get the accolades those two albums are, but Poco's first album, Picking Up the Pieces, fits firmly in with Sweetheart of the Rodeo and Gilded Palace of Sin. Incredible album. You've got Richie Furay, who just left Poco. You have Rusty Young, who played on Kind Woman on one of the last Poco songs on Last Time Around. You got Jim Messina, who was also in the last formation of Buffalo Springfield. And you've got George Grantham on drums. And then for a short period, Randy Meisner was in the band, but was kicked out during the mixing. I guess the story goes that Richie Furay didn't want him during the mixing of this album in the mixing board, or in the room they were mixing in, and so he didn't like that, and he quit. Later formed the Eagles. But so on this album, we have an incredible array of songs. What a Day starts it off. I think there's a version on the Buffalo Springfield box set that they do, an early version of that. You have the title track, Picking Up the Pieces. You've got a great ballad like Make Me Smile. Nobody's Fool is amazing. The whole album is just full of great songs, great playing from all the players. And I always loved Richie Furay's voice, just that clean voice. And it, like people have said, were they too country for rock? Were they too rock for country? I don't know. I think they could have easily fit on radio. You know, they didn't get enough airplay. This album doesn't get enough credit. It's really just an absolute seminal album of country rock. And then you've got Rusty Young's Calico Junction, or Grand Junction, should I say, Grand Junction, which shows off just his amazing, amazing skills. Great album, picking up the pieces from Poco from 1969. Deservedly should get more attention in the early country rock genre. So another great one, a one-off from 1969, is Thunderclap Newman's Hollywood Dream. They had a huge hit off here called Something in the Air that even Tom Petty later covered. But there's just a lot of great songs on here. It's just a one-off of great songs here. The Reason is a great little tune. Open the Door, Homer, a great, really obscure Bob Dylan cover. Look Around, Accidents, Wild Country. Yeah, just great, great album. Yeah, Jimmy McCulloch was in, who later went on to be with Paul McCartney and Wings. Speedy King, the lead vocalist, who I think partly wrote Armenia City in the Sky for The Who off the Who Sellout album. But yeah, just a great one-off album. If you've never heard it, pick this album up. It's just fantastic. Thunderclap Newman, Hollywood Dream. Another great one is the second Fairport Convention album. In the UK, it was called What We Do on Our Holidays. This is the first album to feature Sandy Denny. Just listening to this the other day, there's so many great songs. The first track, Fotherin' Gay, which later Sandy Denny, after she left Fairport Convention, would form a band called Fotherin' Gay. Great tune. She does a great, beautiful version of Dylan's I'll Keep It With Mine. You've got her doing a cover of Eastern Rain by Joni Mitchell. And then there's just a lot of great, really cool, subtle, understated guitar work from Richard Thompson. Great, great album here from Fairport Convention. This is just self-titled here. This is their second album. This is the US version. Again, the UK version was called What We Do on Our Holidays. Another great one is the third album by Lee Michaels. I'm going to read you the liner notes on this real quick. I've always found this a little humorous. So this album was supposedly written or recorded live, okay? So in the liner notes it says, this album was 1 day in the making and 23 years in preparation. Michaels and Frosty, the drummer, entered the recording studio at 5 p.m. June 2nd, 1969. 6 hours and 45 minutes later at 11:45 p.m. of that same day, both performers, with the aid of producer Larry Marks, had completed Lee's third album for A&M Records, recorded live in the studio. This album is as close to live as one would care to come without being forewarned. So this is a great album. The first three Lee Michaels albums, this one, Recital, and Carnival of Life, are fantastic albums. This one definitely has a real live feel. You got Lee Michaels on Lee Michaels on vocals, keyboard, and bass, and Frosty on drums, and that is really it. And they really pack a wallop. You have two people playing instruments, but it's just a wall of sound. He does one of the greatest versions of Stormy Monday on here on side 2. It ends with Heidi High, which was kind of a minor single. Great, kind of cool little sing-along. A lot of other great songs. The whole first side is like basically one song. Tell Me How Do You Feel? I Don't Want No Woman, My Friends, Frosty's Think I'll Go Back. Just a really great listen. Great raw album. Lee Michaels' self-titled album from 69, and it's another great underrated album from 69. Another great one that doesn't get a ton of attention, but I think it's great because it has Rod Stewart on some of his best vocals. You got Ron Wood on bass. It's the second album by Jeff Beck, Beck-Ola. Came out in 69. Not as good as Truth, not as solid as the Truth album, but there's some just real bangers on this. For one, Spanish Boots, the second song on side 1. Just a great vocal by Rod Stewart. There's this really odd little instrumental ditty called Girl from Mill Valley. There's barely any guitar on it. It's just piano driven. They do a couple of Elvis Presley cuts on here, Jailhouse Rock, All Shook Up. Side 3, though, is the best, in my opinion, for this album. You got Plinth, Water Down the Drain, that starts it off. The Hangman's Knee with a great Rod Stewart vocal, and then the instrumental powerhouse Rice Pudding ending the album. Great, great album here. Again, not as good as Truth, but the last album that Rod Stewart would be on, and Ron Wood with the Jeff Beck Group. And this is not a really highly rated album, but over the years it's really grown on me, and I think it has some just stellar songs on it. It's the album that came out after Sweetheart of the Rodeo by the Byrds, and this is called Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde. There's an amazing version of This Wheel's on Fire by Dylan. I think it's one of my favorite versions of This Wheel's on Fire because a lot of people have covered that tune. There's a song on here called Candy. There was a B movie called Candy that this song was featured in. Really cool pop song. Another great song is Old Blue. Great vocal by Roger McGuinn. Child of the Universe, kind of a psychedelic tune. And then you've got Truck Driving Man on side 1 or side 2. Great tune, country rock tune. And there's a great song ending side 1 called Nashville West with those amazing guitar playing of, what is it, Gene Parsons? Not Gene Parsons, Graham Parsons. Clarence White, that's who it is. Clarence White doing this amazing picking style in Nashville West. And then last but not least, I mentioned this one before, but this is just a kick-ass record. And I think it's one of his best. It's one of the best I've ever heard by him. And it's Johnny Winter's first album, The Progressive Blues Experiment. This has a very raw production on it, but every track is a banger. It has Mean Town Blues, a standard of Johnny Winter's, Rollin' and Tumblin', Tribute to Muddy, ends with 44. Every tune on here just kicks ass. And his playing is amazing, and he doesn't get enough credit to this day. I think he did in the past, but he's kind of fallen off the radar. But anyway, those are just some great unsung albums I wanted to feature on today's episode. All from 1969. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please press subscribe. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.